They say monsters don't exist, but Vivienne Whitmore knew better. She'd been raised by one for 23 years, and tonight, covered in her own blood and shaking in a church she'd never seen before, she was about to meet another one who would burn her entire world down just to prove a point. The bruises under her foundation told a story her smile tried to hide, and when the vampire king of England found her bleeding in his church, her father's reign of terror had exactly one night left to exist. Vivienne's hands shook as she pulled down the sleeve of her Starbucks apron, covering the purple fingerprints wrapped around her wrist. The London evening rush had finally died down, and she was alone in the store, wiping down tables she'd already cleaned twice. Anything to delay going home. Her phone buzzed, another text from him. "You're late. You'll regret this." She swallowed hard, tasting copper from where she'd bitten her lip too hard. 23 years old, and she was still that terrified little girl who believed she deserved every blow because she'd been born the day her mother died. The manager had already asked about the bruise on her cheek. She'd lied, again, said she'd slipped. She always slipped in her stories. Across London, in a manor that hadn't appeared on any map since 1643, Alaric Devereux sat in a leather chair that had seen centuries pass, his white hair falling past his shoulders like a waterfall of moonlight. At his feet, a white cat named Phantom watched him with knowing blue eyes. A vampire knelt before him, trembling. "My lord, I didn't know she was under your protection, I swear. I thought she was just—" Alaric held up one hand, and the room fell silent. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 500 years and the accent of old aristocracy touched with something wickedly amused. "You thought? How extraordinary. I wasn't aware you possessed that capability." He stood, and Phantom moved with him like a shadow made of snow. "You see, I have a rather simple philosophy. You touch what's mine, I remove your ability to touch anything, ever, again." The scream that followed made the chandeliers shiver, but Alaric merely smiled, examining his rings as the problem resolved itself with the help of his guards. "Do clean that up," he said pleasantly. "The oriental rug is irreplaceable." Vivienne ran. The bus home had broken down, and walking meant 40 extra minutes, which meant Gerald Whitmore, her father, would be drunk and furious. She cut through the old district, past the cathedral, past the buildings that predated the Great Fire. Rain started falling, cold and accusing. Then she saw it. A church she'd never noticed before, door slightly open, warm light spilling out like an invitation, or a trap. But when her phone rang and her father's slurred voice started cursing, trap seemed better than home. She pushed inside, leaving wet footprints on ancient stone, and didn't see the white cat that had appeared in the window above, watching her with eyes that reflected something more than lamplight. If you're already hooked by what Alaric's about to do, then subscribe and join our Vampire Love Stories family, because what happens next will make you scream his name. Drop in the comments where you're watching from. I need to know where my vampire lovers are hiding. And here's the real question. Do you think Vivienne should have run into that church, or run far away from it?
The church smelled like centuries of whispered prayers and melted wax. Vivienne collapsed into a pew, her body finally giving in to the pain she'd been hiding for hours. Blood dripped steadily from her nose onto her trembling hands, mixing with tears she couldn't hold back anymore. Her ribs screamed where he'd kicked her, and she could taste copper filling her mouth. He'd been waiting outside the Starbucks like a predator, grabbing her the moment her shift ended. "You think you can ignore my calls?" Gerald had slurred, his breath reeking of whiskey and rage. "You killed her, killed my beautiful wife just by being born, and you dare disrespect me?" The alley had been dark, empty, no witnesses, just like always. He'd slammed her against the brick wall, and when she'd finally fought back, finally scratched his face in desperation, his eyes had turned murderous. "Worthless piece of trash. Should have drowned you at birth like the mistake you are." She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the world from spinning, when a voice cut through her sobbing like silk wrapped around steel. "Well, this is unexpected. The voice was cultured, amused, with an accent that belonged in period dramas, not in a church at midnight. She spun around so fast her vision blurred, and when it cleared, her breath simply stopped. He stood in the aisle like he'd been carved from moonlight and shadow, tall and elegant, in a way that made the air around him seem to bend. His white hair fell past his shoulders, impossibly lustrous in the candlelight, framing a face that was too perfect to be human. Sharp cheekbones, lips curved in a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. And those eyes, God, those eyes were ancient, dark as the spaces between stars, holding secrets that predated the stones of this church. A white cat wound between his legs, its blue eyes fixed on her with an intelligence that made her skin prickle. "I do apologize for intruding on your moment of—" He paused, tilting his head as he took in every detail of her appearance, and she watched his expression shift from polite curiosity to something far more dangerous. Solitude. His voice had gone soft, too soft, the kind of soft that preceded storms. He moved closer, and she should have been terrified, should have run, but something kept her frozen. He stopped 3 pews away, and she could see him more clearly now. The expensive suit that probably cost more than she made in a year, the rings on his fingers that looked older than London itself, the way he carried himself like he owned not just the ground he walked on, but the very air around him. "Who," he asked with terrifying gentleness, each word precise as a scalpel, "did this to you?" His gaze lingered on her split lip, her swelling eye, the bruises she knew were already blooming purple across her throat. "Tell me their name." Before she could find her voice, before she could even process what was happening, the church door slammed open with enough force to shake dust from the rafters. Gerald stood there, swaying, his face twisted with drunken fury. "You're there, you ungrateful little—" He stopped mid-sentence, saw who else was in the church. The color drained from his face so fast Vivienne thought he might faint. Oh God, no. Alaric's smile was the most beautiful and horrifying thing Vivienne had ever seen. Not quite, but I appreciate the confusion. It happens more often than you'd think. The white cat sat down, tail swishing, as if settling in for a show.
Gerald Whitmore had heard the stories. Every drunk in every pub in London had heard them whispered over pints and shots. The vampire king who ruled from shadows, who hadn't been seen in decades but whose name still made hardened criminals cross themselves and change their plans. The white-haired devil who'd once nailed a human trafficker to Big Ben just to make a point about territory. "I didn't know," Gerald stammered, backing toward the door, his hands raised like that would somehow protect him. "I didn't realize this was your— She's my daughter, you see, and sometimes discipline is necessary." "Discipline?" Alaric's voice was silk over shattered glass. He moved faster than Vivienne's eyes could track, a blur of motion that ended with her father dangling 3 feet off the ground, Alaric's pale hand wrapped around his throat like a vice. "Is that what you call it? How fascinating." He examined Gerald like a scientist might examine a particularly repugnant specimen. "You know, in my 5 centuries of existence, I've encountered many creative euphemisms for cowardice, but that might be my new favorite." Gerald's feet kicked uselessly, his face turning purple, fingers clawing at Alaric's grip. The vampire didn't even seem to notice, turning his head slightly to look back at Vivienne. "Darling," he said conversationally, as if he wasn't currently strangling her father, "close your eyes for a moment. This next part will be rather unpleasant, and you've seen enough ugliness for one lifetime." But she couldn't close them, couldn't look away as Alaric pulled Gerald close, whispering something in his ear that made her father's eyes go wide with absolute primal terror. Whatever Alaric said, it broke something in Gerald. He started sobbing, the kind of deep, body-shaking sob she'd never heard from him before. Then Alaric dropped him like garbage. Gerald hit the stone floor hard, scrambling backward on his hands and knees, leaving a trail of something that might have been tears or might have been something worse. Alaric pulled out a pristine white handkerchief from his suit pocket, cleaning his hands with meticulous care, each finger wiped as if he'd touched something diseased.
"You have until dawn," he said, his tone shifting back to that terrifying pleasantness. "Pack your things, empty your accounts, disappear to whatever hole will take you. Leave England, leave Europe if you have any wisdom left in that alcohol-soaked brain." He took a step forward, and Gerald whimpered, "Because if I see you after sunrise, Gerald Whitmore, I won't kill you. Death would be a mercy you don't deserve." His smile grew wider, showing teeth that were definitely too sharp to be human. "I'll make you immortal and spend the next several centuries teaching you what pain really means. I'll make you feel every bruise you gave her, every tear she shed magnified 1,000-fold. I'll keep you in my dungeons. Yes, I have dungeons. How delightfully medieval of me. And every night I'll visit you with new and creative ways to make you scream. And just when you think you can't take any more, when you beg for death, I'll heal you completely and start again." He crouched down to Gerald's level, voice dropping to a whisper that carried perfectly in the church's acoustics. "I once kept a man alive for 73 years just because he'd kicked a dog. Imagine what I'll do to you." Gerald fled from the church like the hounds of hell were on his heels, leaving behind only the echo of the door slamming and the scent of his terror. The silence that followed felt heavier than stone, pressing down on Vivienne's shoulders. She tried to stand, needing to run, needing to be anywhere but here with this beautiful monster who just threatened her father with eternal torment. But her legs betrayed her, buckling the moment she put weight on them. The beating had taken more out of her than she had realized. Alaric was beside her before she could fall, catching her with hands that were impossibly gentle, supporting her weight as if she weighed nothing at all. "Easy now," he murmured, his voice losing all traces of the terrifying creature who just sent her father running. "No one will hurt you again." Phantom, the white cat, leapt onto the pew beside her with fluid grace, pressing against her side with a purr that seemed to vibrate through her bones. The cat's fur was impossibly soft, like touching a cloud, and its warmth seemed to ease some of the pain in her ribs. "I don't understand," whispered Vivienne, her voice hoarse from crying. "You don't even know me. I'm nobody." "Nobody?" Alaric's laugh was soft, almost sad. He helped her sit back down, then surprised her by sitting beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, but close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, with hints of amber and wood. "My dear girl, you're bleeding in my church, bearing bruises from someone who should have protected you, and yet you're worried about being nobody?" He produced another handkerchief from somewhere, this one black silk, and carefully dabbed at her still bleeding nose. His touch was professional, clinical almost, but there was something in his eyes that looked like recognition, like he saw something familiar in her pain. "Your church?" she asked, wincing as he gently touched her swollen eye. "I've never seen this place." "Most people don't," he admitted. "It only appears to those who truly need sanctuary. And you, Vivienne," she startled. She hadn't told him her name. He smiled at her reaction. "Your name tag, darling, though I admit I would have known anyway. This city tells me things." He finished cleaning the blood from her face, then sat back, studying her with those ancient eyes. "You have nowhere to go now, do you? He'll have poisoned any family against you, isolated you. It's what they do, men like him." She nodded, fresh tears threatening. He was right. Gerald had made sure she had no one, no friends he hadn't driven away, no family who'd believe her over him. "I have 17 spare bedrooms," Alaric said suddenly, as if the thought had just occurred to him. "Well, 16 if you don't count the one I've converted into a library, but who's counting? The manor gets terribly lonely. Phantom here is excellent company, but his conversational skills are limited to demanding treats and judging my life choices." As if understanding, Phantom meowed indignantly, making Vivienne let out a surprised laugh that immediately made her wince as it pulled at her split lip. "You're asking me to come home with you?" she asked, incredulous. "You're the vampire king of England. I serve coffee for minimum wage. I'm covered in bruises and blood, and I probably smell like espresso and fear." "You smell like vanilla and heartbreak, actually," Alaric corrected, then seemed to realize how that sounded. "Vampire senses. Terribly invasive. I do apologize. He stood, offering her his hand. But yes, I'm asking you to come home with me. Not because you're nobody, but because you're somebody who deserves kindness for once in your life. Besides, his smile turned playful, showing just a hint of fang. Do you have a better offer for tonight? The night buses stopped running an hour ago, and I doubt you want to return to wherever he's been keeping you. She looked at his outstretched hand. Pale, elegant, wearing rings that probably had stories spanning centuries. Then she looked at Phantom, who was watching her with those knowing blue eyes. The cat slow blinked at her, the universal feline sign of trust. Will you turn me into a vampire? She asked, needing to know. Heavens no, Alaric said, looking genuinely offended. Without consent? How barbaric. I'm a monster, darling, but I'm not that kind of monster.
The manor was everything and nothing like Vivienne expected, ancient yet immaculate, with modern touches woven seamlessly into centuries-old architecture. Alaric led her through hallways lined with portraits, whose eyes seemed to follow their movement, past suits of armor that gleamed in the lamplight. Phantom padded ahead of them like a small white ghost, occasionally looking back to ensure they were following. This was my sister's room, Alaric said quietly, opening a door to reveal a space that took Vivienne's breath away. Soft cream walls, a bed that looked like clouds had been given form, and a window seat overlooking gardens that seemed to glow under the moon. She loved the view of the roses. Was? Vivienne asked softly, noticing how his hand tightened on the doorframe. Alaric moved to the window, his reflection translucent in the glass. For a long moment he was silent, and she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries-old grief. Celeste, my youngest sister, she was everything good in our family. Kind where we were cruel, gentle where we were harsh. He touched the window, and Vivienne saw his hand tremble slightly. She fell in love with someone our father didn't approve of, a merchant's son, nobody by our family standards. His laugh was bitter. Father beat her for it repeatedly. Said he was disciplining her, teaching her proper behavior. Vivienne's breath caught, understanding flooding through her. Alaric turned to face her, and for the first time she saw him not as the terrifying vampire king, but as someone who'd once been powerless too. I was away, building my fortune, playing the dutiful eldest son. She sent me letters begging for help, but I thought Father would never truly harm her. She was his daughter. His voice cracked. I was wrong. He beat her so severely one night that she didn't survive it. I found her in the chapel where she'd crawled to pray. She died in my arms, apologizing for bleeding on my coat. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared understanding. Is that why you... Vivienne couldn't finish the question. I killed him, Alaric said simply, tore his throat out in front of the entire court. That's how I became what I am. My rage called to something ancient, something that offered me the power to never be helpless again. He moved away from the window, gesturing to the room. I've kept this room exactly as she left it for 300 years, waiting, I suppose, for someone who needed what I couldn't give her: safety, protection, a chance to heal. Phantom jumped onto the bed, kneading the covers before settling into a perfect white circle. She would have liked you, Alaric added softly. She always said the true measure of nobility wasn't blood or birth, but how we treated those who couldn't fight back. Days passed in the manor like a dream Vivienne was afraid to wake from. Alaric was nothing like the monster London whispered about. He brought her tea every morning, always remembering she took it with 2 sugars and oat milk, a modern abomination he'd tease, but I suppose we must move with the times. He'd had Phantom show her the kitchen, and she'd laughed until her healing ribs protested when the cat had actually seemed to give her a tour, meowing pointedly at various appliances. He's saying the coffee machine is temperamental, Alaric translated seriously. You have to sweet-talk it, compliment its chrome. It's Italian, terribly vain. One evening, she found him in the library he'd mentioned, surrounded by books older than some countries. He was reading to Phantom, who was draped across his lap like he'd paid rent for the space. Jane Austen, he said without looking up. Phantom's a romantic at heart. Won't admit it, of course. Ruins his mysterious reputation. She'd curled up in the chair across from him, and he'd continued reading aloud, his voice painting pictures in the air. When she dozed off, she woke to find a cashmere blanket tucked around her and Phantom standing guard on the arm of her chair. "You're not what I expected," she told him one night over dinner he'd cooked, insisting that immortality is no excuse for not knowing how to properly prepare risotto. He'd raised an eyebrow, waiting. "I expected more vampire things, coffins and capes and general brooding in towers." His laugh filled the dining room, rich and genuine. "I have a cape," he admitted, "but it's so drafty, and coffins are terrible for one's back. As for brooding in towers, well, Tuesday nights are reserved for that. You're welcome to join. We can brood together." She threw a bread roll at him, and he caught it without looking, grinning. Violence at the dinner table? What would Celeste say? But his eyes were warm, approving. She was healing, not just her body, but something deeper. The constant fear that had lived in her chest for 23 years was loosening its grip. Sometimes she'd catch Alaric watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something soft and wondering. And sometimes she'd catch herself watching him the same way. Everything shattered on a Thursday. Vivienne had gone back to the Starbucks to collect her final paycheck, Alaric insisting on driving her in a car that probably cost more than most houses. "I'll wait here," he'd said, sensing her need to do this alone. "Phantom will keep me company, won't you, you judgmental little cloud?" She'd been in the back office when she heard it, her father's voice, not slurred this time, but sharp with desperate cunning. "I know she's with him," Gerald was saying to her manager. "The Vampire King. She's been bewitched, enchanted. He's using her for his dark purposes. You have to help me save her." Her blood turned to ice. She peered around the corner to see Gerald looking haggard but sober, playing the concerned father perfectly. He'd cleaned up, was wearing his only good suit. "She's always been troubled," he continued, and God, he was good at this. "Her mother's death affected her deeply. She makes up stories, you see, says I hurt her, but look at me. Do I look like a man who'd harm his only daughter?" "She did have a lot of bruises," her manager said slowly. "She always had excuses." "Exactly," Gerald leaned forward. "She hurts herself for attention. I've tried to get her help, but now this monster has her, and I'm terrified what he'll do." Vivienne's hands shook. He was doing it again, what he'd always done, twisting the truth, making her the crazy one, the liar. She grabbed her check and fled out the back, but not before she heard Gerald's final words. "I've contacted the newspapers. If she won't come home willingly, maybe public pressure will help. Vampire King kidnaps troubled girl. They'll eat it up." She ran to the car, yanking open the door. Alaric took one look at her face and his expression darkened. What happened? She told him, words tumbling over each other, and watched his face go from concerned to murderous to something worse, disappointed. "You went to the papers," he said slowly. "Of course he did, and they'll paint you as the victim and me the monster who stole you." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I should have known. 500 years, and I still let myself believe." He stopped, jaw clenching. "Believe what?" she asked, but he was already pulling away, walls slamming up behind his eyes. "That I could have something good without it being poisoned," he said quietly. "The headlines will be everywhere by tomorrow. Your father knows exactly what he's doing. He's forcing you to choose. Go back to him publicly, prove I'm not holding you hostage, or watch as they destroy what peace I've built here." He wouldn't look at her. "I won't be the reason you're dragged through the mud. I'll take you to a hotel tonight. In the morning, you can make your statement to the press. Tell them whatever you need to." "Alaric, no, I don't want what you want doesn't matter," he snapped, and she flinched. His face crumbled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But this is what I am, Vivienne. I'm the monster in the story. I always have been. Your father just reminded me of that." Phantom meowed plaintively from the back seat, but Alaric had already shut down, driving in silence, while her heart broke with every mile. The hotel room was cold and sterile, nothing like the warmth of the manor. Vivienne sat on the bed, Phantom curled in her lap. Alaric had left him with her, saying the cat had made his choice. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She answered, and her father's voice slivered through. "You have until noon tomorrow to come home, or every newspaper in England runs the story. I've got photos of your bruises, medical records from when you were younger. I'll tell them he did it all." Her blood ran cold. "You kept records of beating me?" "Insurance," Gerald said simply.
Come home, Vivienne. Tell everyone you lied about me, that you've been sick, that you need help, or watch your vampire burn in the court of public opinion." She hung up, looked at Phantom, who was watching her with those knowing blue eyes. "What do I do?" she whispered. The cat stood, walked to the door, and scratched at it. The message was clear. Choose him. Fight. But how could she fight a narrative her father had been building for 23 years? She grabbed her coat, ran out into the rain. She had to find Alaric, had to explain. The manor gates were locked when she arrived, soaking wet and desperate. She climbed them, tearing her hands on the iron, Phantom somehow keeping pace. The front door was barred. She pounded on it till her fists bled. "Alaric, please, let me in. Let me explain." "Explain what?" His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "That you're going back to him? That you're choosing the devil you know?" "No, I choose you. I choose liar." The word exploded from the shadows, and suddenly he was there, eyes blazing red, fangs extended. "You think I haven't played this game before? You'll go back. They always go back, because in the end, I'm the monster, and he's your blood." She stepped toward him, but he backed away like her touch would burn. "I won't let you destroy yourself for me," he snarled. "Get out! Get out!" But she didn't run. Instead, she did something that shocked them both. She slapped him, hard. The sound echoed in the rain. "You coward," she said, voice shaking. "You absolute coward. You're not protecting me, you're protecting yourself. You're so scared of being hurt again that you'll throw away something real." His face crumbled, the Vampire King facade cracking. "Vivienne, no, you listen. Tomorrow I'm going to that press conference, and I'm going to tell them the truth, all of it, about my father, about you, about everything. And if you're not standing beside me when I do it, then you're right. You are a monster, just not the kind you think."
The press conference was a circus. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions. Gerald stood to one side, playing the concerned father perfectly. Vivienne took the podium, her hands steady despite everything. She looked at the crowd, then at her father, then at the empty space beside her where Alaric should have been. Her heart cracked a little more. Then she began. "My name is Vivienne Whitmore, and everything my father told you is a lie." The room erupted. She raised her voice, powered through. "For 23 years, Gerald Whitmore has beaten me, terrorized me, made me believe I killed my mother by being born. These bruises, this split lip, he did this, not the Vampire King. Alaric Devereaux saved me." She pulled out her phone, played recordings she'd made over the years, her father's drunken rants, his threats, the sound of her own screams. The room went silent. "The Vampire King you fear, he gave me safety, food, kindness. He read Jane Austen to his cat and made me laugh for the first time in years. The doors burst open. Alaric stood there, dressed in an impeccable suit, Phantom at his heels. He walked through the crowd like they were mist, taking his place beside her. "Is a man who was once broken by someone who should have loved him," he finished, taking her hand, "just as she was. And if that makes us monsters, then so be it." He turned to Gerald, who had gone pale. "Your daughter is under my protection, permanently. And if you ever come near her again, I'll forget I'm trying to be civilized." He smiled, showing just a hint of fang. "Run along now, Gerald. The sun's coming up." Gerald fled, again, but this time, Vivienne knew he wouldn't be back. The press exploded with questions, but Alaric just raised one hand. "One more thing. Vivienne Whitmore has accepted my marriage proposal. Rather sudden, I know, but when you've lived 5 centuries, you learn not to waste time." She spun to face him. "I have?" He dropped to one knee right there, pulling out a ring that sparked with inner fire. "You showed me I could be more than the monster," he said softly, ignoring the camera flashes. "You slapped some sense into me, literally. Marry me. Let me spend eternity proving I'm worthy of your courage." Phantom meowed loudly, pawing at her leg. "See? Even the cat agrees. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes!" The kiss that followed made the front page of every newspaper in England. But the headlines weren't about monsters and victims. They were about love conquering fear, about broken people choosing to heal together, about a woman who refused to be silenced, and a vampire king who remembered how to hope. 6 months later, at their wedding in that hidden church, Gerald's name wasn't even a whisper. He'd vanished completely, too afraid to exist in the same country as Alaric Devereux's wife. And if sometimes, late at night, Phantom would disappear for hours and return looking smugly satisfied, while news reports mentioned Gerald's new residence in Alaska having mysterious troubles, well, cats would be cats, even magical ones. The greatest revenge, Vivienne learned, wasn't violence or fear. It was living happily, loudly, and completely. It was slow dancing in the kitchen while Phantom judged them. It was Alaric reading to their twins, a boy and a girl with their mother's kindness and their father's strength. It was proving that love, real love, could grow in the spaces where pain used to live. And somewhere in London, in a Starbucks where she used to hide bruises under concealer, a new barista would sometimes hear the story about the girl who survived, who chose the monster and found a prince, who learned that sometimes the scariest choice is the one that saves you. If this story touched your soul, if you're sitting there with your heart racing, then you're already part of our vampire family. But make it official. Hit that subscribe button right now, because I promise you, the next story, it's even more emotionally twisted, more addictive, and will leave you breathless. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know which corner of the world is falling in love with these stories. And click that video on your screen right now for another tale that will consume your entire night. Trust me, you won't sleep until you know how it ends.